My grandma had a secret life no one knew about until her funeral. I always knew my grandma was a little unconventional. She had this twinkle in her eye, like she was constantly in on some inside joke the rest of us weren't privy to. She never told boring stories about the good old days. Instead, she'd drop weird, cryptic comments like, "Back in '87, I had to leave town for a while. Customs officers can be real sticklers, you know," and then just change the subject. But nothing could have prepared me for what we found out at her funeral. It started out as a normal enough service. Our family isn't particularly fancy, so it was a modest gathering in the small-town church she always pretended to attend. I'm like 90% sure she only went to make connections for whatever side hustle she had going on. The priest was saying all the usual stuff about how she was a kind and loving woman, but even he had this weird smirk, like he knew something we didn't. And then, right as things were wrapping up, a man walked in. Not just any man, this guy looked important. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit, sunglasses inside, like a villain in a spy movie, and had this air of "I know things you don't." He walked straight to the casket, took something out of his pocket, and placed a gold coin on top of it. The room fell dead silent. "She was a legend," he said, voice low and serious. "Saved my ass in Panama back in '87. I owe her my life." And then he just turned and left. I could hear a pin drop in that church. My mom, who had been dabbing her eyes with a tissue, froze mid-motion. My uncle actually choked on his own spit, and my cousin leaned over and whispered the words we were all thinking. What the actual fuck? Now, under normal circumstances, I'd assume this was just some confused old friend of hers with a flair for the dramatic. But the gold coin, the Panama comment, the intense spy movie energy. Yeah, no, we needed answers. My uncle, who is built like a retired linebacker and has zero patience for bullshit, stood up so fast his chair nearly flipped. "Hold on a goddamn minute," he barked. Mystery man, who was already halfway out the door, paused. A long silence stretched between him and our entire bewildered family. Finally, with a sigh that screamed, "Fine, I guess I owe you people an explanation," he turned back around. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, slipping off his sunglasses. He had that kind of face that looked like he'd seen some shit. "Your grandmother was an incredible woman." "Yeah, we got that," I said, stepping forward. "But who the hell are you?" He studied me for a second, then glanced around at the rest of the family, like he was debating whether we were ready for whatever he was about to say. Then he nodded. "My name is Daniel Rojas," he said, "and your grandmother was the best smuggler I've ever known." I swear to God, you could hear my mom's soul leave her body. The church exploded into reactions. My aunt gasped like she was in a soap opera. My cousin went, "Yo, what?" way too loudly for a funeral setting. And my uncle, he just rubbed his face aggressively like he was recalibrating his entire worldview. "Excuse me, what?" my mom finally managed to say. "Daniel, because I guess we were on a first-name basis now," just nodded, like this was a totally normal funeral revelation. "Your grandmother had a very specific set of skills," he said. "She could get things across borders that, weren't exactly supposed to be there." I blinked, like drugs. Daniel actually laughed. God knows she had standards. "Oh well, thank God Grandma was an ethical smuggler." He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "She dealt in high-value goods, art, antiques, rare collectibles, sometimes things that were misplaced by their original owners and needed relocation." I turned to my mom. "You knew about this?" She looked horrified. "Of course not." My uncle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly muttered, "Wait a damn second." We all turned to him. He was staring at Daniel, then back at the gold coin on the casket. His face went through about 5 different emotions before he finally said, "Are you telling me that Mom was an international art thief?" Daniel didn't confirm it outright, but he did smile in a way that very much suggested bingo. And I swear to God, at that exact moment, I could feel Grandma laughing her ass off in the afterlife. For a second, nobody said anything. We were all just processing. My grandma, sweet, slightly unhinged, always had candy in her purse grandma, was apparently some kind of underground Indiana Jones. Finally, my uncle let out a long breath. "Jesus Christ, Mom." Daniel, meanwhile, checked his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. "Listen, I really shouldn't be saying any of this," he muttered. "She kept her secrets for a reason." "Oh, hell no," I snapped. "You don't get to drop that bomb and then just walk away. What did she do? Who were her clients? Are we about to get a visit from, like, Interpol?" Daniel just smirked. "No, but I'd be careful answering unknown numbers for a while." My mom made a noise that I can only describe as a cross between a gasp and a "why is this happening to me" sob. Before we could demand more answers, Daniel clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Look, kid, if you really want to know, go home, start looking. You'll find what you need." With that, he turned and walked out the door, leaving us standing there like a bunch of dumbasses in a funeral home. My uncle was the first to recover. "Okay," he said, rolling his shoulders like he was about to fight a ghost. "We're going to Mom's house, now." Operation. What the hell was Grandma hiding? Grandma's house was exactly the way she'd left it. Cozy, slightly cluttered, and smelling faintly of vanilla and something I now suspected was bootleg alcohol. We all gathered in the living room, standing around like we were about to perform a seance. "So," my cousin said, "where the hell do we even start?" We decided to break up and search. Mom and Aunt Linda took the bedrooms. My cousin and I took the basement. My uncle took the shed outside. The first hour was disappointing. We found a lot of weird trinkets from around the world. A shoebox full of foreign currency. A literal suitcase full of expired fake passports. But no big answers. And my uncle yelled from outside, "You guys need to see this." We ran out to the shed, expecting, I don't know, a hidden safe or something. Instead, he was standing in front of a trapdoor in the floor. "Was this always here?" I asked. He just gave me a look. "Does it look like I knew Mom had a secret hatch?" Fair point. We pried it open and stared down into darkness. A wooden ladder led into what looked like a root cellar. My uncle grabbed a flashlight, took a deep breath, and climbed down first. A moment later, we heard, "Holy shit." We scrambled down after him, and that's when we saw it. Grandma had a freaking underground vault. The vault was insane. I mean, you hear underground vault, and you expect something like a dusty root cellar or maybe an old bunker full of canned beans and regret. But this looked like something straight out of an action movie. The walls were lined with industrial steel shelves, each one packed with strange, out-of-place objects. A single flickering light bulb swung from the ceiling, casting weird, shifting shadows. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of aged leather, old paper, and something metallic, like a mix of a library, a pawn shop, and a place where you'd totally get murdered in a spy thriller. We just stood there, staring at what our sweet old grandma had been hiding beneath her goddamn tomato garden. And my cousin finally whispered, "What the actual fuck is this place?" The inventory of chaos. We split up, each picking a different shelf or crate to investigate. What we found made less and less sense the deeper we dug. The what the hell, grandma section. Stacks of old passports with different names, some with her actual picture, others altered. Some were so worn they looked like they'd survived a war. A bundle of foreign currency, including bills from countries that don't even exist anymore. One stack had a sticky note on it that just said, "For bail, just in case." A small notebook full of coded messages. We couldn't decipher a damn thing, but there were dates and locations scribbled next to them. The "why is this even here" section. A Roman coin the size of my palm. It looked expensive. Like, probably belongs in a museum, expensive. A dagger with an ivory handle. The blade was still razor sharp. Who the hell keeps something like that in their underground shed vault? A stack of letters tied together with red string. One was addressed to my dearest Evelyn and was signed with just an initial. R. Who the hell is R? This is probably a legal section. A painting, not a normal one. This was wrapped in thick canvas with old wax seals on the edges. The kind of thing people steal in heist movies. A box of gold coins. Some of them had weird symbols on them, like pirate treasure, and others looked freshly minted. A bottle of extremely old whiskey with a handwritten label that just said property of the governor. Which governor? No clue. The "oh, we are so screwed" moment. We were already losing our minds when my uncle pulled a large wooden chest out from under a shelf. It was heavy, old, and locked with one of those old-timey iron padlocks. "I swear to God, if this is full of body parts, I'm moving to Canada," my cousin muttered. After 10 minutes of struggling, my uncle finally smashed the lock with a hammer that we found on another shelf. Because, of course, Grandma had a hammer in her underground crime cave. He lifted the lid, and we all gasped. Inside, wrapped in delicate silk cloth, was a crown. Like a literal, golden, jewel-encrusted crown. My mom let out a strangled noise. "Is that what I think it is?" Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. We just stared at this ridiculously ornate, probably stolen, absolutely out of place, royal-looking crown sitting in my grandma's basement. And my cousin whispered the only logical thing. "So, who wants to Google missing crown first?" We stared at the crown. The kind of stare where your brain is trying to process information, but just rejects it outright. It wasn't some cheap costume jewelry. This thing looked legit. The gold had that aged but still glowing patina. The embedded jewels weren't just shiny. They had depth, like real-ass rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. My cousin pulled out his phone. "I swear to God, if this is from, like, the British Royal Collection, I'm walking into the ocean." He started Googling. Meanwhile, my uncle carefully picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The weight of it made his arms drop slightly. Holy shit, he muttered. This thing is heavy. Then we saw it. The inside of the crown had an engraving. Simple, elegant script that read, Reyda. Rest was worn down, but Rey is Spanish for king. My mom gasped. Oh my God, did she steal from actual royalty? Meanwhile, my cousin went completely still. His phone screen cast a weird glow on his face. Guys, he said, voice way too calm. This looks exactly like the lost crown of the last king of Spain. We all froze. What? He turned the screen toward us. Sure enough, there was an old black and white photo of a nearly identical crown. The article headline. The missing crown of Alfonso, XII, a mystery that has baffled historians for over a century. A century. A-hole, ass century. I had to sit down. Bro, are you telling me that Grandma stole something that has been missing since the 1800s? My cousin scrolled frantically. Okay, it wasn't stolen exactly. It was lost in a shipwreck or some shit and nobody ever recovered it. We all turned, in unison, toward the gold coin Daniel left on the casket. Panama. Shipwreck. Grandma. Oh shit. Before we could completely melt down, my uncle clapped his hands. All right, enough, he said. If Mom was involved in this kind of business, there's no way in hell this is the weirdest thing down here. Keep looking. And then it got weirder. He dug deeper, moving more crates and shifting shelves. The next truly unhinged discovery was inside a locked metal box with no markings. After struggling with it for 5 minutes, my cousin just smacked the side like it was an old vending machine. And it popped open. Inside, there was a single item, carefully packed in protective padding. Small, sealed glass vial, filled with a thick red liquid. We all just stared at it. Is that blood? My aunt whispered. The vial was old. The glass had that slightly imperfect, wavy look of something hand-blown. There was a faded paper label with elegant, curling script, but the only word still legible was Sanger. Spanish. For blood. My cousin backed up so fast he nearly fell over. Nope, absolutely not. I'm out. I'm done. Mom crossed herself like she was suddenly the most Catholic woman on the planet. Why did my mother have a bottle of goddamn blood? My uncle, ever the pragmatic one, narrowed his eyes at the vial. It has to be something valuable, he reasoned. Maybe it's historical. Or cursed, my cousin added helpfully. We're all probably cursed now. Maybe it's some kind of medicine, I suggested. Old bloodletting stuff. We were spiraling, absolutely spiraling. And then my aunt picked up an old book from the same box. She brushed off the dust and flipped to the first page. The handwritten title read, La Sangre del Inmortal. My Spanish wasn't great, but even I knew what that meant. The blood of the immortal. We all locked eyes. My uncle sighed. Welp, guess we found Grandma's weirdest secret. My cousin, still pale as hell, muttered, I hate that you just said weirdest like there might be worse stuff. We all stared at the vial. Because honestly, he had a point. At this point, nothing surprised us anymore. He had gone from sweet Grandma's cozy home to national treasure, family edition, and now we were just numb. My uncle picked up the vial of questionable immortality blood, sighed, and just tossed it onto the shelf like it was an old jar of pickles. All right, he said, cracking his knuckles. Let's see what other bullshit Mom was hoarding. And with that, we got back to work. Grandma's totally normal collection. This is probably stolen section. A set of ceremonial daggers, all from different cultures, displayed in a velvet-lined case like a twisted version of a souvenir spoon collection. Medieval-looking key, with a tag that just said to the past. An ancient-looking scroll, sealed in a glass tube. Aunt Linda unrolled it, took one look at the text, and went, Yup, this is Latin, I'm out. The grandma was a smuggler, section. A crate full of Cuban cigars, perfectly preserved, despite looking old as hell. A tin of tea leaves labeled for special occasions only. My cousin opened it and immediately gagged. Oh my God, is that opium? We immediately put it back. A single worn leather glove, just one, no pair. It was in a locked box like it was extremely important, no clue why. The why was this even hidden, section. A stack of handwritten letters Grandma never sent. One was addressed to my mom, dated 3 years ago. She snatched it up so fast I thought she'd break the sound barrier. Perfectly folded military uniform, but not from any country we recognized. A freaking VHS tape labeled for emergencies only. Oh, we were absolutely watching that later. The mood shift, we're all too tired for this shit. At the time we uncovered a literal treasure chest full of antique jewelry. Nobody even reacted. My cousin just held up an emerald necklace the size of a golf ball and went, cool, before tossing it onto the ever-growing pile of insane family heirlooms on the floor. Aunt Linda pulled out a framed photo of Grandma with a group of men in tuxedos. "Who the hell are these guys?" she muttered. Uncle Mike barely glanced up. "Probably ex-lovers. Added to the grandma was a femme fatale pile." At this point, even my mom, who had started this day believing her mother was just a sweet old lady who baked cookies, was over it. She lifted the scroll written in Latin, waved it around, and just yelled at the ceiling. "Mom, were you in a secret society or something?" Silence. Then a single creak from upstairs. We all froze. Because, we were alone in the house. Or at least, we thought we were. That ominous creak from upstairs. Yeah, turns out it was just Grandma's fat old cat, Mr. Whiskers, knocking over a lamp like the little chaos demon he was. Everyone exhaled at once, except for my cousin, who was halfway to grabbing a dagger off the shelf like we were in a damn horror movie. "Jesus Christ," my uncle muttered, rubbing his temples. "All right, enough digging through literal stolen artifacts. Let's figure out what's on that VHS tape." And that, my friends, was our worst decision of the entire day. The VHS tape of Nope. The ancient, dust-covered VCR in Grandma's living room still worked, because of course it did. Grandma never threw anything away. We popped in the tape, the screen flickered. And the moment the video started playing, every single one of us regretted it immediately. I'm not going to describe exactly what was on it. Let's just say it was very illegal, very disturbing, and 1000% not what you want to find in your sweet old grandma's house. It wasn't violence, it wasn't anything gory, but it was bad. Bad enough that my uncle immediately ejected the tape, grabbed it like it was radioactive, and chucked it into the fireplace without a word. We all just sat there, staring at the flames as the plastic melted, feeling like we needed to bleach our eyeballs. Aunt Linda finally broke the silence. "So," she said, voice hollow, "we're just never speaking of this again." Mom nodded way too fast. "Correct, never happened." My cousin, still looking a little pale, whispered, "Grandma was into some shit, huh?" "Apparently." We sat in silence for another few minutes, processing, regretting every life choice that led us to this moment. Then my uncle clapped his hands together and went, "Welp, I need a drink." And that's when my mom muttered, "Speaking of drinks, I bet she still has some of her moonshine around here somewhere." The legend of Grandma's moonshine. If you've ever lived in a small town, you know there's always that one old lady who makes the good stuff. For us, that was Grandma. Her moonshine was famous, or maybe infamous is the better word. People swore it could strip paint, cure the flu, and kill a man all at once. The cops never touched her because everyone loved her, and nobody wanted to be responsible for arresting the town grandma. She didn't sell it in stores. It was word of mouth only. You had to know a guy who knew a guy to get your hands on a bottle. And if you were lucky enough to get some, oh, buddy, you never forgot it. So naturally, after the VHS incident, we needed something strong enough to erase our entire memory of that tape. Grandma absolutely still had a stash somewhere. Hunt for the holy grail of liquor. We started searching everywhere. The kitchen, the attic, the garage. Nothing. Then Uncle Mike had a light bulb moment. He stomped outside, made a beeline for the tool shed, and ripped up a loose floorboard. And there it was. A single, dusty-ass wooden crate, filled with thick glass bottles of Grandma's legendary moonshine. Each one had a handwritten label. Some just said extra strong, which was concerning. One was marked not for Jerry. Jerry was her neighbor. We had questions. And one, way in the back, was labeled the good stuff, drink at your own risk. My uncle grabbed that one. "All right," he said, popping the cork. "Let's see what all the fuss was about." He took a sip. It immediately collapsed into a coughing fit. "Oh my God," he wheezed. "This could fuel a damn rocket." My cousin sniffed the bottle and immediately recoiled. "This smells like sin and regret." Uncle Mike, tears still in his eyes, handed the bottle to my mom. She took one sip, paused, then nodded solemnly. "Yeah," she croaked, "that's the good stuff." So now we were all sitting in the middle of Grandma's basement, surrounded by the treasure that was probably stolen, definitely illegal, and absolutely not the stuff anyone would want the cops to know about. There were two camps forming, and I could feel the tension mounting. Camp 1, we can't let this go. My cousin, who'd been the most freaked out about everything, was the first to speak up. "We can't just keep this to ourselves, you know," he said, his voice shaky. "I mean, what if she was involved in something serious? What if she was, I don't know, a part of a criminal organization or something? The stuff we found in that box, that's illegal." My mom shook her head. "But think about it. If we go to the cops with this, they're going to tear this place apart. It's not just the moonshine. They'll dig into everything, her life, her friends, her connections. And what if they find us? What if we get caught up in this mess?" "Exactly," my cousin shot back. "But if we don't do something, we're just letting her get away with whatever the hell this was. What if it's bigger than we think? Uncle Mike spoke up then. Yeah, but look at the mess we're already in. We don't even know the full story. What if she was forced into it? What if she wasn't as in control of all this stuff as we think? Or worse, Aunt Linda added, her voice grim. What if this was her plan all along? What if she was protecting someone else? She might have known exactly what she was doing. Camp 2. No one needs to know. On the other side of the room, there was a different conversation happening, one about keeping quiet. It's not our problem, my uncle said, the tone of his voice final. She's gone, it's over. We don't know what happened, and frankly, it's none of our business. But, my mom started. No, we can't touch this. If we tell anyone, we're opening up a whole new can of worms. The cops will show up and start asking questions. They'll tear this house apart, looking for something we don't even understand. And we'll be the ones left trying to explain why we were poking around in her old stuff. Yeah, Aunt Linda agreed. And think about the rest of the family. Do we want them all finding out about this stuff? You think Grandma would have wanted us to make a scene? My cousin, who had been on the verge of pulling out his phone to report everything to the authorities, looked really conflicted. But, no buts, Uncle Mike cut him off. What's done is done, we leave it. Burn the stuff if we have to. Don't even think about making this public. It's the best thing for us. The dilemma, what now? We all sat there, frozen. The weight of the decision felt like 1,000 pounds pressing on us. The thought of doing nothing was unsettling. Grandma had kept this secret life hidden for decades. She had built a house of cards that no one, not even we, could understand. But what if we were making a huge mistake by ignoring it? By letting her secrets die with her, we might be leaving someone dangerous unaccounted for. Uncle Mike finally spoke up. Look, he started, rubbing his neck. I get it. We don't want to make waves, and we don't want to drag ourselves into something we can't understand. But think about this. Do we really want to risk Grandma's secrets coming back to bite us? What if there's someone out there looking for what she had? What if there are more people involved in all this? My mom, always the level-headed one, sighed deeply. I'm not saying we go to the police, but we should be careful. If there's something we need to deal with, we need to figure it out quietly. Let's not open that Pandora's box unless we have to. A final decision, do we keep the stuff? The conversation dragged on, but in the end, we all agreed on one thing. We couldn't just leave it untouched. We decided to move everything out of the basement, but not to the trash. Instead, we buried the most dangerous-looking items, the crown, the vial of blood, the daggers, in a safe place that no one could stumble upon by accident. And the rest? Well, we didn't call the cops, but we did start keeping a very low profile. The moonshine? We left that in the back of the shed for now, though we were pretty sure it was already gone by the time we were done. It wasn't worth the risk of having someone else show up, demanding answers. In the end, the family left the house, took a long, hard look at each other, and agreed on one thing. Whatever Grandma was mixed up in, we were better off leaving it all behind. All right, before anyone starts judging me for being too dramatic or whatever, let me clear this up. I didn't actually live through any of this. I wasn't involved. Not really. You see, this whole story is one I heard from a buddy of mine. Let's call him Mark, while we were both at a bar one night. Mark had been out of town when his grandma passed, and apparently when he got back and started digging through her stuff, he found out some crazy stuff about her. Stuff no one ever thought was possible. The moonshine, the stolen artifacts, the strange, unmarked tapes. Yeah, apparently, all that stuff was real, and it wasn't just some wild tale. Mark, being Mark, was way too drunk to realize he was spilling the beans about the crazy things he had discovered. And after a couple beers, he started talking about his own grandma's weird life, and I couldn't help but notice the eerie similarities to my own family situation. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was close enough that I couldn't shake the feeling this was more than just coincidence. So I'm not telling you this as if I was the one who found the stash of illegal items and weird relics in the basement. No. I'm telling you this because Mark told me this wild tale, and I'm passing it on with all the details changed, names, places, everything. Why? Because, well, I don't want to get into trouble. Let's just say the stuff Mark shared, some of it's better left in the dark for everyone's sake. The no-need-to-know clause. Now I know you're wondering, did Mark go to the police? Did he tell anyone about his grandma's secret life? Here's the thing, he didn't. As far as I know, Mark and his family decided to keep quiet about it. They buried it, left it unspoken. They didn't want to risk bringing the cops into it or having their whole family dragged into some criminal mess that could have devastated them. It was one of those things you just don't talk about, and honestly, I can't blame them for that. I mean, what would you do in their position? If you found out your grandma was involved in something like this, something so far out there, it's hard to know whether to go public or just leave it behind. But let's be real, even I don't know what the best choice would have been. So the moral of the story. Look, if you take anything from this, it's that some family secrets are just meant to stay buried. Some things aren't meant for the light of day. Whether it's about Grandma's secret life, the stolen artifacts, or the weird moonshine stash, sometimes it's just better to leave it all untouched. And if you're ever at a bar with your buddy Mark and he starts spilling stories like this, maybe don't ask for details. Trust me, some things are better left unsaid. As for me, I've heard the story. I've changed the names. I'll probably never bring it up again. But every now and then when I'm alone, I can't help but wonder, what else was Grandma hiding?